Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking very quickly about if you've been in that position where everything you want it seems out of reach and you are hit by so many things that are unplanned and they are not favorable and you are wondering how to navigate from that point to a point where you can look back and say, yes, I survived that phase. Then that's the story that I'm going to talk to you today about. There were two women that somehow seemed to be unfortunate in the choice of a life partner. It may have seemed so. And because they got married to men that they relocated to their own country to start up a new life because the country they were coming from had challenges with their economics, with scale and everything. And they decided to move from that country into this country, which is their country. And then they met these young girls who a love affair happened between them and they got married. One of them, the husband's name was Malon, and the other one's husband's name was Shilion, both sons of Elimelech. Now, the story now got a twist here because the men spent 10 years in that country, and in that 10 years, their father in law died, and both of them, their husbands also died. Now, how bleak can the situation get? And now the mother-in-law is relocating from that country and deciding that, you know what, I'd rather cut my losses. And now this is something that really is interesting for me. The fact that sometimes the best times to make a decision to leave a place is when the challenges start coming. But most times we are scared. We're like, sometimes we're even afraid of what people would say because we've left with so much hope. And then these people we left behind, we're thinking about, okay, if I go back now, what will I say? If they ask me the effect of my traveling, I had relocated from this country and now I've lost my husband. Are you in that position where it seemed like the plans you had, even having made movements in regards to them, they are not working the way you wanted? And you're honestly thinking within your heart whether should you go back or should you stay. I want to tell you today that the best position to take is to go back to God in prayers. And if you have any inclinations that going back would be better, please don't, because of what people would say, stay back. There are some of us that are in diaspora today, and the only reason why we're in diaspora is because of the fact that we are wondering what the people we left back home would say. If the place you went to is not the way it seemed, maybe because you didn't do your research very well, maybe there were things you just expected would be good and they are not panning out the way you thought. The best time to cut your losses and just make progress is right now as I'm talking to you. In fact, it's before this video came feed, but the other best time is now. Don't be tempted to think about what people would say, how their expectations would be dashed, and every other thing in between, and stay back when you know you should be moving. For you, this may be a sign to tell you that you made that move with all intent to ensure that it pans out well. But then the move that you made is becoming a problem because somehow you didn't do enough research. Don't die in silence. Don't die in that space where you are because you are shy or you don't know how people will take it or because of people's expectations. The only expectation for your life that is valid is God's. And God's expectation of you may not line up with people or the society's expectation based on what they call success, right? So I want to tell you that if you need to make those moves, please, by all means, do. Second thing, very quickly, is the fact that you need to know and understand that life would happen sometimes with or without your input. And when it does happen, making progress beyond that point is a choice you must make. And the sooner you make that choice, the better for you, right? It's a choice you must deliberately make, and you cannot outsource it to someone else. Now, these two women were faced with the challenge of either going back with their mother-in-law or staying back in their own land. And Ruth, who is one of the wives, chose the earlier to go back with her mother-in-law. Offer went back. And that taught me the fact that Life is full of decisions, and every decision has its path. In fact, failing to decide is also a decision. So, what's the lesson here? The lesson is just the fact that as much as it lies within your power, be able to learn through your situations to understand what would be the best fit for you. What would God's idea for you be? I think Ruth actually shows the part of empathy, because looking at the fact that my mom-in-law came to this country, she came with her husband and two sons, and right now is she just going to live so empty? I think she went with Naomi from that standpoint of, I don't want this woman to just go back alone. And God saw her heart. The minute she said, your people will be my people and your God will be my God, there was a prophecy that was hovering over Bethlehem of Judea, which is where the husband and father-in-law of Ruth were from, that God had been looking for who to fulfill it through. And that's the prophecy that Jesus, the Messiah, was going to come through Bethlehem of Judea, right? And somehow, God saw that with the selflessness of Ruth, he ensured that she bettered Obed, who became the grandfather of Jesse, who became the father of King David, who became the father of the Christ. When you trace it down, what does that tell us? The lesson is simple. Sometimes the best decision you can make for yourself is the decision to put others first. It's the decision to want to make life easier for someone else, because God sees our sacrifices even when they do not make sense, right? And this applies to you, my dear. You may be in a position where your present position is many people's aspirations. How can you provide guidance for them? How can you make things easily accessible to them? How can you share the knowledge you have that you've been given that they may not have access to? How can you share your contact list? For some, all they need is a contact in your contact list. How can you do that? God really wants you to start living from that selfless perspective, because the people that will fulfill God's prophecies, they are not people whose name have already been written down. They are people that have a certain life, that are doing things the way God wants, and then God plugs them into his program. Because if you ask, there was no prophecy that said that a virgin named Mary will birth the Messiah. There was no prophecy that said that a woman named Hannah would be the mother of the prophets that were anointed the first kings of Israel. So God was such that when we become so selfless, that we decide to put others first, that we decide to put his program first, like Hannah did, it becomes about our personal business, becomes his business. And he seeks for ways to plug us into his programs where we can impact others for him, right? And it's important. It's important because the whole of life, it's a dash. The date you were born has already been written. The dash is what you're doing now. And the day you drop dead will become the end of that dash. So you will see 1995 dash to 2050 something. Everything you did in between that entire lifetime is in that dash. And the only things you can fill it with that would matter are the things you do for other people from a selfless perspective, not because you want to be able to boast with it, and then the things you do for God's kingdom and his righteousness. I hope you got value today. If you did, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more godly wisdom with Carol. Thank you.